Welcome to Young and Adulting, a podcast of the young adults community at Christ Fellowship Church. Our hope is to create a safe place for authentic conversation around the ins and outs of life as we all try to navigate following Jesus in the world we live in today. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the conversation.
What's up, Young and Adulting community? We are back with episode 2 of season 2. So welcome wherever you're joining in from, listening from. We love you. We're excited to jump into the conversation today because season 2 is all about relationships. And so we've been answering some questions that have come in on social media, and we're going to attack those. But today's conversation is going to be particularly interesting and exciting. So you're going to want to stick around. I'm joined by my good friends, Erica and Joel, and it's going to be a fun time. We're hanging out together. We're not sponsored by LaCroix, but it is a good beverage, just saying. But before we jump off the conversation, talking about relationships,
we do have
how
Casey
they've changed
in the booth with us.
Yes. This is something very important to know. Each week we're going to have Casey or Joel or somebody in the booth, but you'll have to stick around with us to find out who it is. It's kind of like the fact-checking machine. So, Casey, what's up?
Hey.
She's there. Before I throw it to you, we're talking about how our relationships have changed over the last couple years with COVID and isolation. But before we jump into that, I got to ask like a dad joke question.
My favorite.
How much? Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Here we go. Hopefully this makes the cut.
Check.
Yeah. How much does a polar bear weigh?
Enough to break the ice.
Casey, take it away with an icebreaker.
That was a great transition, Tyler. I'm gonna high five you across the table for that one.
Thank
that
you.
was a good one.
Casey in the booth.
All right, I got it. So, okay, we're talking about, last couple of years, how we're talking about relationships this season, right? Okay, so we're talking about how COVID, isolation, quarantine, all that kind of stuff has changed our relationships. A lot of people talking about, I feel like a different person now, or I used to be an extrovert, now I feel very introverted. So there's a hint of social awkwardness, social anxiety, to all that kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So where my brain went straight to, I guess, for my personal experience is something that I feel like is so real. And I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts on are things that feel embarrassing but shouldn't, or rather things that feel embarrassing for no reason. Does this statement resonate with you at all?
That's a good thought-provoking
Okay, I have some examples for you to ponder. Sitting there while people sing you happy birthday.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay, we agree. Embarrassing,
Agreed.
kind of weird. You don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Okay, saying bye to someone and then walking away in the same direction.
Yes.
The worst. Okay.
Pretty real.
Here's another one. Opening cards and trying to pretend that you don't see the money in them. Got a few more. People watching you do something and then them watching you do it makes you forget how to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The worst.
Okay, cool.
The worst.
Or, I mean, maybe this is like the musician in me speaking, but anytime someone's like, oh yeah, how does that song go? And I'm like,
I'm sorry,
like
what do you like?
yeah.
All right, a few more. Pretending to need something else from the grocery store until the person that's in the way of the item you actually need moves out of the way.
Oh, I do this frequently. I end up with, especially at Target at stores, because Target's just like a trap for money.
Yes, because saying excuse me is just, it's not an
much.
option. It's not an option. Okay, here's one. These last two are, to me, the most relevant ones. Walking back after bowling. Like walking back after your turn in bowling. Come on!
I don't ever bowl.
It's pretty specific.
Yeah.
What else would you do?
You're telling me you don't feel so awkward like turning around and walking back to everybody after you just bowled?
Bowling's just an awkward experience in general. We're being honest with ourselves.
Oh, 100%.
I know I'm not good at it, so I'll throw with all the confidence that I got to strike and just walk away, knowing it's probably a gutter ball.
This is the last one. This is my number one. Things that feel embarrassing for no reason, or things that feel embarrassing but should not. Grabbing your luggage from the overhead bin.
Yep.
After a flight.
There's so much pressure.
I agree.
Pressure performance.
And there's so much pressure to leave your seat quickly. You know what I mean?
That too, and I feel like on the opposite side of it, like I know that I have a hard time having grace for people that take way too long in the plane. So then I feel like those people are doing the same thing to me when I take too long in the plane.
That's great.
That's all I got.
Casey from the booth, can I say two of mine? I just thought.
Say 'em.
Okay, so this goes two ways. When you walk through a door and someone's behind you, and so you hold the door wide open. I mean, there's no way the door is going to close. And then the person walks through the door but puts their hand on the door like your door's not actually being held open. Right, so there's that. I always feel like...
Or when you hold it and someone's like, "Oh, I'm not going away, sorry."
Yeah. Or the other one where you, like, someone holds the door open for you, but you're like 15, 20 yards away. And so you feel like I got to run, but
like,
they
"Don't
opened
run."
it for you. So it's like, should I walk? Like, and now they open it for me. So I feel like I have to speed up, but really, like, we should just continue walking at the same normal pace and not feel awkward about it, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with crossing the street. Same thing.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Okay, maybe crossing the street, like in your neighborhood or something.
I don't know. Anytime someone's stopping, I hurriedly walk across the street because when people just stroll, I'm like, okay, let's pick up the pace a little bit. I don't know.
I love this. I love sharing awkward experiences, making sure we're all on the same page. So Casey set us up. We're talking about some things we feel awkward doing that we shouldn't, because sometimes being social and honestly, relationships are hard and confusing and awkward. I had someone tell me it's only awkward if you make it awkward, which I think is somewhat true, but a lot of times like, I think that was a really just unavoidably awkward scenario. So today, if you're like, where are you guys going with this? We're talking about how our relationships, how have they been different coming out of the quarantine season that we're in for the better part of 2020, where we weren't in close proximity. Let's jump into the conversation today. How do we think that relationships might be different in your life or those around you from before COVID, now after COVID? What's different in your life and your relationships?
I think for me, even before the quarantine, I just think that our generations and the generations after us are already a little attention deficit just because there's so many things to distract us. And I know for me, coming out of that season, I almost had to retrain myself socially because you're so used to not having necessarily the gravity of someone or accountability, really, of having someone directly face to face with you when you're having a conversation or discussing something. And it was so easy to just tap out of something when you were mentally done or if you were bored or whatever. It's so easily distracted by a bunch of other things. And it really wasn't there was some cost to it, but the normal cost that you experience face to face was not there. So it's really easy to just kind of drop things and move to the next thing. Even when people were still engaged in a conversation or talking through things or work things or whatever, there was just so many. The digital distraction was just so rampant, even more so than it was before quarantine. So I remember coming back out of that and being in more circles with people and engaging with people more socially. It was really interesting because I just had to retrain myself to like, hey, you can't just pick up your phone in the middle of someone telling you a story about something. You need to engage with the conversation. And as someone, I have a background of social anxiety pretty badly through my middle school years. I would say maybe 3 or 4 years post college. And so I had already had to train myself in that way to learn how to just engage with people and not be so scared of it and not know how to continue a conversation and things like that. Then I feel like I regressed through that and then was able to come back to it. So it was interesting in a positive way. I feel like we all gained kind of an understanding of how, I don't know, I feel like my hand extends to more people now and I have a little more grace when people's plans change, or if I don't talk to someone for a couple weeks, it's not like so weird to me or offensive. Like some people get offended if they don't talk to someone. Some of my best friends, I talk to them maybe once a month for a couple hours. We catch up. It's like nothing was ever lost, and we move on. So I don't know. It deepens some of my relationships and made me have a different perspective on relationships, but also definitely had to retrain my social awareness and social skills post that, just to be able to remain engaged in conversation and all that good stuff. So
yeah, I think for me, it's made some of my relationships, at least specifically with my family, healthier. Just because my family was always, and I'm not sure if it's like a Hispanic culture thing or if it's I'm not really sure if it's unique to my family, but it was always like, well, we're going to get together and we're going to do this, and we're going to get together and we're going to do this, and we're going to get together and like we'll hang out, and that's how we build community, and that's how we end up being family. And with COVID, obviously, is like you can't hang out with people. And so our family had to figure out how to become like digitally better. And that's still like true. Like my mom sends me voice notes all the times now. Like I've actually sat down and gotten like a calendar invite with my sister, which is just so strange because now we're like adults. And so we like calendar on our lives and we're like, hey, actually, in order for us to keep up with each other, we need to figure out like a digital way to do this because she's moved to Seattle and these different things. And so it's actually made our relationships like healthier and it's helped deepen it on that extent.
It's great. It's so crazy, honestly, to sit down and talk about this because we're really not even very far removed from that experience. And yet it feels like so long ago.
Yeah.
And it feels like so much has changed. And I wonder if a lot of the things that have changed have just been our perspective on how we view like life and people. I was talking to the pastor a couple weeks ago, and honestly, this is like a really basic thing, but he's like, we need to get back to the place where we value proximity with people and like make it a priority. And there's something about being like face to face with somebody, like something like this. Like we could do this over Zoom, and like I'm sure the content would probably be the same, but the experience would be completely different.
100%.
And like the what's built in this space is maybe different than what would be built in a digital space. So how do we think that like our relationships have been shaped or changed because of the digital space, whether for good or for worse? What have you seen that look like in your maybe your personal life, your work life? For our generation, what are some things that we think digital spaces has shaped?
Yeah, I think it comes down to accountability of the face-to-face, of being with someone face-to-face. I don't know. I feel like I love technology. I love the advancement of technology. I love the conveniences that it affords for us. I do think in the process, like we possibly could have lost a bit of our humanity just because I feel like we're so used to quick and convenient, and I feel like, I don't know if it'll affect us as much. I think about the generations coming in the future, how they're not specifically this season, but this season in tandem with it already being a highly digital generation and people being attached to their phones and attached to the internet. Are people going to know how to develop lasting, healthy friendships where you walk with people through hard seasons in life and not just turn something off and be like, I'm done with this because this is difficult. I'm going to go move on to something that's easier for me to manage or mitigate in my head. And so I'm interested to see, just because we're far enough out of it to kind of understand, like, okay, this is how we've been shaped, but still so close to it to understand, like, kind of the ripple effect of that. But yeah, I feel like I think we're learning it again, but I feel like for a while the art of understanding how to build deeper relationships might have been lost. I don't know, Joel, if you have anything to add to that, but
A couple of things like I've really like thought about digitally in the fact of like, even in the space of like when you have like a breakup, when you have something major happen in your life, the great thing about technology, like I think of when I was overseas for college.
right.
And I remember going through it wasn't a breakup, but it was like a really, actually it might have been a breakup with my wife. Actually, I think she told me like we weren't dating.
This is a relationship series.
We weren't married, sorry. We were dating and she was like, I don't want to be with you anymore. And I remember like bawling my eyes out to my mom over like Zoom, and so thankful for the fact that like
Right.
technology made a way for me to stay in contact with my mom and have like community and have this accountability. But then I'm also really sensitive to the fact like there's no replacement, and I don't think there ever will be a replacement for having someone there physically while you're going through something.
100%.
The other thing I think about, like completely different in the digital space, but no longer is it like, oh, what were you doing this weekend? It's like I saw that you
100%.
And I think when it comes to our relationships in person, even myself, like it's taking me time to train myself and reminding myself, like, it doesn't matter that I saw this on social media. It doesn't, like, it does to an extent, but I actually need to make sure I'm asking the right questions in person to get to know this person, because it's not just about, like, showing love through like it is saying like, hey, I value enough to hear. I want to hear about all the details of this, not just whatever you posted.
I think that on the flip side of that, that mentality also enables people to not walk through life with people or share things that they're walking through in community. Now, I'm not saying you go share your deep, dark history with every single person you meet on the street. But what I'm saying is I think we need to be aware that people are watching our lives, and the last thing people need is more highlight reels. And it's okay if people comment on successes and things like that. There's always something worth celebrating, but I think that we also need to feel a responsibility that there's a shadow side to that to manage, and it's not just I'm going to post about or show just all my positive things. And I think there's discretion to talking about, the harder parts of life. But I think it could be a very easy thing to be enabled to do when people are just looking at these quick snapshots, and you can control what that looks like. And it's easy to control what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, not everything that we see is true reality. And kind of like Joel, what you're saying is, when you are on social media and you do see stuff that's happening in the lives of your friends, or even just like whatever acquaintances, it can sometimes it pulls back the intentionality of actually asking. And so I've been off social media for a couple weeks and so I'm like, I don't know. It feels so weird what happens outside of like 9 to 5 of the people I'm with, unless I ask them anymore, or find that out. And there's something feels a little special in actually asking that, because I'm like hearing it from them versus like seeing it in a different space. And so grateful and I think that's super valuable. I think a huge lesson I've learned, because when I graduated from high school, I moved away, and I've literally been out of my parents' house since 2012, summer here or there. But I think something I learned before COVID and then definitely after is that where physical proximity is not possible, the digital space becomes so valuable.
Yeah.
Like for family, like all I've known since I've been 18 is like FaceTime and group chats with my family, because physical proximity is not possible. But where it is possible, it doesn't do justice. And so trying to like, if I can make it happen to be in proximity with you, it's worth it, because you talk about like the low moments and the high moments. Yeah. I went through a horrible breakup at like 21 and was devastated in college. And my brother, who's 2 years younger, went to college with me, and he was literally my counselor for like 4 straight months, where I literally was like holding his hands at a coffee table, just like crying and pouring my guts out. And he's this introvert, like I'm exhausting him. And I needed that. Yeah. I needed like to be touched and like held. And I think we don't acknowledge that. And so then when something else happens, there's a trauma that happens, or there's something that rocks our life, and we're not able to have that physical proximity with people. Maybe it's a phone call and we're grateful, but it doesn't do the same thing. Like I was on the phone with my brother in the fall after our family went through something difficult, like crying, and same comfort, different experience of like, man, we're literally designed and built to be face to face. We were talking about this. I just was thinking about when Jesus, he died, he was resurrected, and he's revealing himself to people. And like, imagine if everyone's finding out about this on like social media, like, oh, I just saw like Jesus was raised, and like Thomas, like, oh, I saw this, but what does he say? He literally like, until I get face to face. Right. And put my hands in his wounds, like there's something like I think just so different about that, and so valuable. So, yeah, I think there's a lot still we have to process around this conversation, but we're grateful for the digital space because we can connect with people we literally can't be in the same room with, which is just crazy that I can FaceTime my parents, and my like 2-year-old now knows my mom, like I know my mom through a screen, and literally will like. He literally said a couple months ago, up to like her, and it was earth shattering. Her heart like broke, and then she flew down like 2 weeks later. But like I'm like, that is profound that he has made an intimate connection with someone that he's not in the same space. So super grateful. All right, let's turn the corner a little bit. FOMO. I think when we talk about the digital space, FOMO, fear of missing out, is really real. Here's the question. On some level, we've all probably experienced FOMO as a result of social media. What are some things that we experience? Like, why do we experience FOMO? Is it valid? Is it real? Like, what are maybe the things behind those feelings?
I'd say yes, it's valid. Yes, it's real. Yes, we all experience it. It's just all everyone experiences FOMO.
I mean, I don't, but I definitely
Sorry.
do. Oh my gosh, almost every day.
I only do.
Yeah.
I think the root of it is believing that like whatever I have isn't what's best, and there is something better out there for me. Like whatever God is holding out something better for me. I am missing out on this better experience. I'm not going to have connections with people based off of this. And like the truth is, like I don't actually believe that that's true. Like if it was the best thing for you, I do believe like God would that's where you would be. That's what God would have for you. And even in that, like maybe this was the thing that God intended for me and I chose not to do it. I still believe like he works all things out together for good. So trusting in that is my limited perspective.
Yeah, I'd say as like I feel like it's almost like a fork in the road. It either goes that route where it's like what I have's not good enough or I don't trust that this is the best for me. And the other is I'm not good enough or I don't feel someone didn't value me enough to include me in an experience. And I feel like depending on which way you're bent, I definitely bend more towards that. Oh, like someone didn't value me enough to add me here. I wasn't good enough for some reason to be included in this experience. And it's something that ends up, us chasing these rabbit trails in our minds of like, I wasn't good enough to be included in this. But it's funny because the one thing I love about God is that he always has the wider perspective. And we have such like a dime's amount of a perspective in the big scope of our lives. And when we get older or we remove ourselves further from the experience, we see how those experiences could have shaped our lives or how in the bigger picture of things, it wasn't that big of a deal. There were some people we probably shouldn't have been around. There are some other things I could have been doing in my free time that would positively shape my future, things like that. But in the moment, you're so close to it, you're like, oh my gosh. It's like the elephant principle. It's like when you're close to an elephant, all you see is the skin and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing's huge. But if you drive away from it like 2 miles, it looks like a pin, So, struggling with the idea of like, am I valued enough to be included? Was I good enough to not be, or was I not good enough to not be included kind of thing? But really at the end of the day, kind of like what you said, Joel, what's for us is for us, what's not for us is not. And we have to trust the process of those things and trust that God knows best and God has the wider perspective to understand how those things can shape us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
We're talking about relationships. This is a question we're going to ask every person in season 2. And what is the greatest piece of relationship advice that you've been given? You can take this as in friendships, just in relationships in general. However you want to answer the question, best piece of advice to leave our audience with.
Every relationship is made up of two people at 100%.
Boom. Drop the mic.
Always ask the question, what's going on? My therapist told me this actually this past week or 2 weeks ago. Just when it comes to a relationship, instead of coming to someone and saying like, well, why did you do this? Well, didn't you see this? Well, they probably didn't see it. They probably still don't understand it. And there's always more going on. So like when you're going to someone, whether it's conflict, whether it's whatever, ask what's going on.
It's great. Casey in the booth.
Yes.
What you got?
Oh, wow. I didn't know I was going to be asked this question. Is asking the question, like, do I love being loved more than I love the person standing in front of me? If that makes sense. Like,
Dang, Casey.
do I love being loved by the other person, or do I love that person so much that I'm willing to relinquish my own preferences and love them?
That was great.
Yeah.
You hold on to that the whole time?
Wasn't my idea. Someone gave it to me.
Oh,
that's great.
That was awesome.
Awesome. Seems like a great place to land for today. Erica, Joel, Casey in the booth, thanks so much for being a part of this conversation. Again, this is just the launch pads for hopefully more conversations to come. This is Relationships. This is Young Adulting Season 2. So we will see you next time. We love you, and we'll stay in the loop. Love y'all.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Young and Adulting. Follow us on Instagram at cf.youngadults. And if there's a topic you'd like to talk about, we want to hear about it. Send us an email or leave a comment with your thoughts. We'll see you next time.